Hey, I just want to share with you some things that are really vital, important from this book. This is the Bible and ancient writings of ancient wisdom. And so the reason why I'm bringing this to you today is because a lot of people think that God has no right to judge the earth and stuff like that. And is there a God anyway, right? Well, I believe that there is a God. I believe that He proves Himself in these words of this book, and I believe that He is justified in His decisions that He makes, and here's the reason why. If you create something, then you are responsible for it, but you also have authority over it. So since God, in the beginning, created the heavens and the earth, since He did that, then He has the right to rule over it as He deems necessary. So a lot of people don't really understand this. A lot of people don't even think there's a God. But I hate to tell you this, but there actually is a God who created the earth long ago. There's a big, huge artifact on the face of the earth. You might want to find it, okay? But besides that, here's some really important things in Scripture that kind of justifies what I'm going to say that God has actually the authority to judge things on the earth. And then we're going to find out some of the things that He said in the past. And understanding that is going to be really important. And you might disagree with me and say that's a bunch of malarkey. But you're not really arguing with me, you're really arguing with God. So keep that in mind when you're getting upset, okay? Alright, and this has to do with the law. This is from Romans chapter 3, and starting in verse 19, it says, "Now we know that whatever the law says, it speaks to those who are under the law, so that every mouth may be closed and all the world may become accountable to God. Because by the works of the law no flesh will be justified in His sight, for through the law comes the knowledge of sin." So this is the purpose of the law. The reason why the law is given is to give people the knowledge of sin, to see that they've actually missed it, that they missed the mark, okay? So that's the purpose of the law. That's the reason why the law was given, okay? So I'm going to go over a couple things here in the law. And this is going to be in Exodus chapter 20. Now, in Exodus chapter 20, this is actually when God comes down and He talks with them. The Ten Commandments are given at this point in time. And remember, the Ten Commandments are just the crux of what God had originally said. And there's other laws and bylaws of which are written down, which are actually quite extensive to quite an extent. And I just want to make it clear that this is just the beginning, okay, of the rules and regulations that the Jews had to keep. And so it says here in chapter 20 of Exodus, it says, and starting with verse 1, it says, "Then the God spoke to all these words, saying, I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. You shall have no other gods before me. You shall not make for yourself an idol or any likeness of what is in the heaven above, or on the earth beneath, or in the water under the earth. You shall not worship them or serve them, for I, the Lord, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers on the children, on the third and the fourth generations of those who hate me, but showing loving kindness to thousands, to those who love me and keep my commandments. You shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain, for the Lord will not leave him unpunished who takes His name in vain. Remember the Sabbath to keep it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work. On the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord your God, and you shall not do any work, you and your sons or your daughter, your mule," goes into these farm animals here, "your female slave, your cattle, and your sojourner who stays with you. For 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, the sea, and all that is in them, and rested on the seventh day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and made it holy. Honor your father and your mother, that your days may be prolonged in the land which the Lord your God gives you." And by the way, if you did not listen to your father or mother, then what happened was they were to take you out and stone you to death, okay? I believe that's how it goes. But anyway, so if you basically confronted your parents, were disobedient, said something to them, then they could actually take you out and stone you, okay? And this is actually verse 13 now. You shall not murder, you shall not commit adultery, you shall not steal, you shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. You shall not covet your neighbor's house, you shall not covet your neighbor's wife, or his male servant, or his female servant, or his ox, or his donkey, or anything that belongs to your neighbor. Okay, and here's the clincher, because really remember, God is meeting with the people here. And all the people perceived the thunder and the lightning, flashings and sounds of the trumpet, and the mountain smoking. And when the people saw it, they trembled and stood at a distance. Okay, so see, this was the scene that happened when God gave the Ten Commandments. It was a super scary sight, and these peoples were actually freaking out of their minds when God spoke to them. Okay, so let's I'm going to go over a couple more things here, which I really think is actually pretty important here. So let me see if I can find this information here to make sure that I got this taken care of correctly. And all right, here's some really interesting things, because it goes like at different things. It talks about property rights, and actually, if someone was a slave, all right, if they were a Jewish slave, within 7 years they were released. That was mandatory in the Jewish system of slavery. And if somebody, however, said that they loved their master, they'd take an awl and they'd poke a little hole in their ear, and they would be the slave to that person the rest of their lives. So I'm just trying to explain a couple things here. It says that you shall not afflict any widow or orphan, okay? And just different things here. For every breach of trust, whether it is by ox or donkey or sheep or clothing, or by any loss of anything which one says, this is it, in the case of both parties shall come before the judges, and he whom the judge condemns shall pay double to his neighbor. So this is talking about different things, different property rights, different laws that were written down, okay? So, again, you shall not bear false witness. Do not join your hand with the wicked to be a malicious witness. You shall not follow the masses in doing evil. You shall not testify in a dispute so as to turn aside after a multitude in order to pervert justice. So this is really key and important, because actually this happened a couple times when Moses was actually out in the wilderness, all right? The masses would just rebel against God, start complaining about God. They would go their own way, and then God would actually have a judgment against them, okay? And the reason why I'm bringing all this to your attention is because people still don't believe that, because here's the law. The law was written by God, okay, given to Moses, and the Ten Commandments were written on stone by the finger of God twice, because the first time it came down and the people were in complete rebellion, he throws the commandments down at his feet, and there's great wickedness that they had done because Aaron had let them get out of hand. They were worshiping a calf after all these events that happened, which was kind of dumb. But at the same time, they're so used to idols that they're in their minds, they saw all the gods of Egypt all the time. And so in their perception and their perceiving of things, that's what they were used to. And so they didn't want to deal with the terrible, horrible God that they were looking at that just wiped all these people, did all these things, you know. They said, no, we're going to make a calf for ourselves and we're going to worship that. All right, so that was a bad thing, because God's a jealous God. He just told them that he's a jealous God, okay? So the reason why I'm bringing this to your attention is because God made man. And here's the thing. If God tells you that you must jump in the lake every Tuesday morning, then that means that you jump in the lake every Tuesday morning, okay? That would be a law, in other words. Now, it seems like a ridiculous law, but if you made the universe and you made people to jump in the water on Tuesday, then that would be a law. That's the whole point I'm trying to make here. God has the right to say, to make a standard for mankind, but all of his standards didn't have to do with jumping in the water, but they did have to do with communicating with one person to another. If somebody steals something from somebody, that there is a law written for that. If somebody kills someone accidentally, there's a law written concerning that. If someone murders somebody on purpose, then there's a law concerning that, okay? So all that is written in the law. So it was man with man and man with God First of all, your relationship with God, particularly with your communication, your relationship with other people, because we were made in the image of God. That's the reason why God gave the law, okay? And again, the law wasn't to justify someone before our eyes or anybody else's eyes. The purpose of the law, again, was for through the law comes the knowledge of sin. It was to talk about sin. It was to communicate sin, that you are unrighteous, I am holy. This is why you're unrighteous. This is the reason why I'm holy, okay? It's a separation between God and humanity. But here's the key, all right? Now, I've said all that because, again, that one thing about talking about, shall not follow after the masses, I see a lot of people doing whatever they want. In other words, the law actually says something in here actually about homosexuality being wrong. You should not sleep with a man as one sleeps with a woman. I don't know where that is, but I know that it's in here because I've read it before, okay?